Richard is an English professor at a college. One day, he learns from his doctor that he has stage 4 lung cancer and doesn't have long to live. Although there is a treatment that could save his life, Richard refuses to undergo it. He has a family, including his wife Veronica and daughter Olivia. He decides to share the news of his illness with them, but just as he is about to speak at the dinner table, Olivia reveals that she is a lesbian and has a girlfriend. Veronica struggles to accept this and makes fun of Olivia, causing her to storm off to her room. Following this, Veronica confides in Richard about rumors of her having an affair with his boss. Afterward, Veronica turns to Richard and asks if he has something to share. He brushes off the topic and avoids discussing the illness. The next day in class, he dismisses those students who come to college merely for the degree. After that, he tells the remaining students that they will read a book, and each of them will share what they learned from it with the class. Anyone who learns something new will receive a reward. As he leaves, he asks the students if any of them knows a bald person or if they themselves are bald, inviting them to meet him in his office. The students are intrigued because they have never seen a professor speak like this before. After that, Richard meets Peter, who is not only the chairman of his college but also a friend. Richard confides in Peter that he wants to retire in the next quarter and asks if Peter can help him with this. Peter responds by saying that retirement doesn't come so easily. He inquires if Richard truly wants to retire, to which Richard attempts to lie, but Peter sees through it. Eventually, Richard reveals that he has stage 4 lung cancer. He asks Peter to keep this information confidential. Later, Richard goes home and talks to his wife, Veronica. He tells her that her extramarital affair doesn't bother him and suggests that they are now free from their relationship. However, he insists that whatever they do, they should keep it hidden to protect their daughter from the fallout. Veronica agrees to this arrangement. After that, they both enjoy some drinks together, having indulged a bit too much. In the midst of this, Olivia arrives home with her girlfriend, but upon seeing her parents inebriated, she becomes quite upset and storms off. The next day in class, Richard comes across a boy named Daniel who offers him a cigarette. However, since it's Daniel's first time smoking, Richard finds his smile rather off-putting. Following this, Richard asks everyone to introduce themselves, starting with a girl named Claire. He prompts her to explain why the whole class should get to know her. Claire responds that she's not sure, but perhaps it's because her uncle is the college president. Richard then remarks that he doesn't like that man at all, to which Claire agrees. After that, Richard takes all the students on a group outing. In the bathroom, he has a physical encounter with a waiter. Afterward, he steps outside and tells the students to give the waiter a good tip, though everyone understands what transpired inside. The next day, Daniel visits Richard's office and shaves his head. He then asks Richard if he has ever been physical with another guy. Daniel, being quite bold, offers Richard the chance to have a physical experience with him, and Richard agrees, as it's a completely new adventure for him. Later, a girl named Rose presents an explanation of her book, and while everyone else is captivated, Richard is the only one who seems unimpressed. He mentions that she could earn a decent grade. Following this, Richard criticizes a poll made by Veronica, to which his students point out that it was created by his wife. Richard responds, asserting that doesn't mean he can't express his own opinion. After that, everyone gathers for the inauguration of the dishes prepared by Veronica. However, only Veronica and Henry know the true reason behind the creation of this pillar. During this time, Olivia tells Richard that her mom has forbidden her from attending the state school, to which Richard grants her permission. Shortly after, Veronica approaches them and announces that she will be going to dinner with Henry, the college president. When Olivia returns home, she asks Richard why he is still with her mom. It dawns on Olivia that her mom is involved with Henry. Richard explains that as you grow older, you seek someone with whom you can share the burdens of your mistakes, especially when life hasn't turned out the way you hoped. Following this, Richard inquires about Olivia's love life, and she reveals that she is in love, prompting Richard to respond with a simple acknowledgement. The next day, Richard conducts his class in the college garden, where a student explains her book. As he listens, Richard finds himself bored and grades her work. He then asks the students if they understood anything, to which they confidently reply that they are quite intelligent. Richard counters that true intelligence lies in the ability to endure challenges. Shortly after, Daniel asks for permission to smoke, and Richard grants it, even indulging in a drink himself. Peter and Harry witness this and become quite upset. After finishing his drink, Richard heads to the bar for more, prompting Peter to decide to take him to a support group. This group is a place where individuals with problems meet regularly to provide each other with monthly support, but Richard shows no interest in participating. A man is offered by someone to go out and drink together, but he declines the invitation because he has cancer. After this, Peter and Richard leave the place. By the time they reach the 12th bar, Peter has consumed quite a bit of alcohol since his friend Richard only has a few days left. Suddenly, a student named Killer from Hungary arrives. Peter, having drunk too much, is sent home in a taxi called by Richard and Claire. Claire also suggests calling a taxi for Richard, but he wants to stay and drink a little longer. In the bar, Richard informs the clerk that he is in the last stage of cancer. Claire invites him to dance, but while dancing, Richard collapses and has to be taken to the hospital. The next day, Peter visits him there. When Richard returns home, Veronica asks where he was all night, but Richard responds vaguely. After this, Henry calls Richard to his office because he has been accused of something. However, before Henry can ask him anything, Richard lashes out, claiming he knows that Akbar is with his wife. He mentions that he built a useless pole with a very limited college budget, which was completely unnecessary. Richard even threatens Henry. Richard is eager for his retirement letter to be approved quickly. After that, he heads to Peter's house to celebrate Peter's wife's birthday with his family. While there, he starts coughing and, upon noticing blood in his cough, Olivia becomes concerned about him. Richard and Peter excuse themselves from the dinner table, and Peter congratulates Richard on finally getting his retirement. The next day in class, Claire explains a topic about love that resonates well, prompting Richard to give her praise. He then takes the opportunity to share with all his students the importance of life, encouraging them not to settle for being just ordinary like 98% of the world, but to learn to live for themselves. This marks Richard's final lesson. Later, he meets Peter again, but suddenly feels unwell, prompting Peter to suggest taking him to the hospital, although Richard hesitates. After that, Richard attends a party hosted by Veronica, who has now become the chancellor of the college. At the gathering, he encounters Henry's wife and shares a kiss with her, which doesn't sit well with anyone present. During the honor speech, Peter interrupts Richard to reveal Henry's true character, accusing him of having inappropriate intentions towards the faculty's wives. This deeply offends Henry, who tries to silence Richard, but it no longer matters to Richard since he is already retired. He even shares his cancer diagnosis with everyone, which leaves the crowd emotional. Veronica, moved by the moment, approaches him, and Richard apologizes for keeping his illness a secret from her. Later, Richard returns home, where Olivia informs him that she has broken up with who cheated on her. Richard understands that there are plenty of good girls in the world and that he could find someone better. After this, Olivia asks him if he is okay, to reveals his cancer diagnosis. He then says goodbye to his daughter and leaves with his dog. Although he doesn't know where he's headed, he just doesn't want to die in front of his family. After driving for a while, he comes to a fork in the road but chooses to drive towards a river that leads to the ocean, ultimately taking his own life. This marks the end of the movie. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure.